The Jews have regained control of the Temple Mount, paving the way for constructing the third Jewish temple. This event links to what Jesus spoke about as birth pains and the alliance forming against Israel. Israel, with its diverse cultures, is the historical hub of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, causing tensions. Recently, Birthright, a Jewish group, expressed a desire to reclaim land for a new place of worship, showing their commitment to rebuilding the temple. So, let's dive into this video today to learn more. Israel is a small country in the Middle East, about the size of New Jersey. It is on the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea and is surrounded by Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Most of the people in Israel are Jewish, but the country has many important sites for Jews, Muslims, and Christians. The history of Israel, filled with times of peace and conflict, is mostly known from the Hebrew Bible. The story of Israel began long ago. According to the Old Testament, a man named Abram lived in Canaan. When he was 75 years old, he heard God's call and left his home. He traveled with his wife Sarai and nephew Lot to Canaan. So Abraham is a central figure in monotheistic faiths. He's considered the father of Judaism through his son Isaac and of Islam through his son Ishmael. Abraham's descendants were slaves in Egypt before coming to the land of Canaan, which is like the old version of modern Israel. The name Israel was given to Abraham's grandson Jacob. After a difficult journey, they reached Canaan, which God had promised to them and their descendants. But before Abram and his group arrived, Canaan was already home to different tribes, such as the Hittites and Amorites. Canaan had many tribes with their own cultures, languages, and ways of life, mostly farming and trade. They believed in many gods, which showed their colorful beliefs. It's not clear when Abram arrived in Canaan, but people think it was around the early 2nd millennium BCE. Abram's relationship with the Canaanites was complicated. Sometimes they were friendly, other times they caused trouble. Despite the difficulties, Abram and his family found a place for themselves in Canaan. Why is Israel's land important? The land of Israel is super important in history, culture, and religion, especially for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Many different groups have lived there over many years, like the Assyrians, Babylonians, ancient Israelites, and Canaanites. It's like a big cradle that holds stories from many cultures. This land has been important to many civilizations and empires throughout its chaotic history. While others worshipped many gods, the Israelites were known for their dedication to one God. They didn't focus on grand buildings but worshipped their God faithfully. The words in the Hebrew Bible, also called the Torah, have had a lasting impact. These texts tell the story of Abraham being called by God to leave his home and go to the promised land of Canaan. This promise was passed down to Isaac, Abraham's son, and then to Jacob, who was given the name Israel. This led to the formation of the tribes of Israel. The Israelites spent a long time in Egypt as slaves before Moses led them to freedom. They journeyed towards Canaan, which they aimed to conquer under the leadership of Joshua. The Bible tells of their struggles with neighboring peoples, especially the Philistines. Around 1000 BC, the Israelite tribes joined under King Saul, then King David, and King Solomon during the United Monarchy period. King Solomon built a special place for worship called the First Temple on the Temple Mount. This was a big deal because it showed God's promise to the Jewish people. But things got tough after the kingdom split. The Assyrians took over the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BC. Later, the Babylonians conquered the southern kingdom of Judah in 586 BC. They even destroyed that first temple. When the Persians beat the Babylonians, a cool guy named Cyrus the Great said Jewish exiles could go back and rebuild their temple, which started what's called the Second Temple period. In the 1st century CE, Christianity started in that area with Jesus of Nazareth. But then, in 70 CE, the Romans wrecked the Second Temple during the Jewish-Roman War. All these big events, mixed with holy books and old stuff they dug up, really shaped who the Jewish people were and what they believed, and even had an impact on the whole world. King David, a famous figure, captured Jerusalem and made it Israel's capital. His son, King Solomon, built the first holy temple in Jerusalem, which held the Ark of the Covenant. After Solomon's death, the kingdom split into Israel and Judah in 931 BC. Moving forward to the 19th and 20th centuries, Zionism became significant in Israel's history. Zionists wanted to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. This led to a wave of Jewish people immigrating, especially after the Holocaust in World War II. In the 1920s and 1930s, many Jewish people moved to Palestine to escape anti-Semitism in Europe. This move, called Aliyah, changed who lived there, with Jews setting up farming communities like kibbutzim and moshavim. But it also caused tension because Arab communities worried about losing their land and culture. This fear led to fights between Jewish and Arab groups over who gets what in the region. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, who led the Jewish agency, said, "Hey, we're making Israel." He talked about how deeply Jewish people felt connected to the land of Palestine, especially after going through tough times like the Holocaust. He thanked other countries for their help. In 1948, Israel declared its independence, marking a historic achievement. However, this also caused ongoing tensions with the Arab population in Palestine. Jerusalem, a center of religious significance and conflict. Now let's go back to about 4,000 years ago. Imagine the dry Middle Eastern landscapes and find the earliest bits of Jerusalem, called Rusalim, in old stories. Jerusalem saw lots of different groups come and go, like the Canaanites, Jebusites, and Israelites, each leaving their mark. Around 1000 BCE, King David did a big thing by taking over Jerusalem from the Jebusites and making it the main city of the United Kingdom of Israel. King Solomon added to it by building fancy stuff like the First Temple, showing how important the city was for religion and politics. Jerusalem is super important for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For Jews, it's the most special city because they feel like God is close there. The Western Wall, which is part of the Old Temple, is really important. Christians think of Jerusalem as a place connected to Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, especially the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. In Islam, it's the third most important city, with special places like the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. Jerusalem's history is a big mix of different groups, from the Israelites to Romans, Arabs, Crusaders, and Ottomans, each leaving something behind. It was a big prize for conquerors and a place where cultures mixed. Today, Jerusalem is split up along religious and political lines. The old city, with all its holy spots, has people from different faiths all mixed in. The conflict between Israelis and Palestinians makes things even trickier, with both groups saying it's their capital. It's still a big deal in talks about peace and in how different countries deal with each other. Jerusalem is of immense importance to the three main Abrahamic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It is filled with holy relics and shared sites, yet remains at the heart of a long-standing conflict. What sets Jerusalem apart is its rich history and disputed legal status. With a history spanning at least 4,400 years, Jerusalem has seen destruction and changing rulers over time. The modern city, particularly East Jerusalem, which includes sites like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Western Wall, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is vastly different from its ancient counterpart. These sites hold immense religious significance for Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. Despite its religious importance, Jerusalem is marred by political and religious tensions, especially between Israel and Palestine. Following the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel gained control over much of the city, including East Jerusalem, which is considered occupied Palestinian territory. The city's complex tapestry makes it a focal point for conflicts and controversies, highlighted by the demolition of the old Moroccan quarter by Israeli forces to create access to the Western Wall. This action further complicated Jerusalem's history and added to ongoing tensions. Third Temple rebuilding. Religious communities in Jerusalem encounter various challenges. For Jews, the destruction of their first and second temples created a gap in their worship practices, prompting the proposal to build a third temple. Jerusalem's history reflects a delicate balance between religious beliefs, historical significance, and the demands of the modern world. Since the fall of the Second Temple in 70 AD, the region, including the Temple Mount, has experienced waves of migration and colonization by diverse peoples. This complexity complicates the Israelite claim to the land. Many people eagerly anticipate the construction of the Third Temple in Jerusalem, considering it more significant than the previous ones destroyed. Despite its absence, it holds immense importance in Judaism, particularly for Orthodox Jews, who view it as the holiest place of worship. Since 1987, the Temple movement has been diligently preparing for the construction of the Third Temple, gradually working towards this goal in the 21st century. While many people in modern Israel and worldwide may not be very religious, Orthodox Jews take this endeavor seriously, regarding it as a spiritual obligation and excluding non-religious individuals from involvement. They have revived the Sanhedrin, a religious group overseeing temple matters, to ensure the proper construction of the temple. For Orthodox Jews, rebuilding the temple holds profound significance. They believe it will bring about positive changes in the world and are convinced that the world can only progress once the temple is reconstructed. Gershon Salomon, who leads the Temple Mount Faithful, actively promotes the idea of building the temple in Israel. His group has organized protests at the temple site, crafted a special cornerstone for the Third Temple, and manufactured various items for its construction. According to Solomon, constructing the Third Temple is essential to rectify historical injustices for the people mentioned in the Bible who lived in the Holy Land. The Sanhedrin, which oversees temple matters, is preparing for temple services by cultivating a special forest with plants required for the Third Temple. Rabbi Hillel Weiss, speaking on behalf of the Sanhedrin, emphasizes the significance of the temple as a connection between the land and God. Contrary to popular belief about sacrifices involving animals and blood, many sacrifices consisted of plants grown in Israel. Obstacles to rebuilding the temple. The Temple Mount is of immense religious and historical importance, but is also a contentious and sensitive area. Control of it has been disputed between Israel and Palestine for years. Constructing a new temple would require addressing infrastructure challenges, which could affect existing facilities like schools and hospitals in the area. Additionally, the Temple Mount is rich in archaeological sites, which could be damaged by excavation and reconstruction activities. Environmental concerns also arise, with worries about disturbing rare species and the area's biodiversity. Moreover, the region's religious diversity poses a significant obstacle. While Jews assert their rightful claim to the land, Muslims have historical disagreements, leading to violence. The Dome of the Rock, a revered Muslim site on the Temple Mount, has long been inaccessible to Jews, further complicating the situation. Despite challenges, Jewish claims to Jerusalem have gained support through archaeological findings. Discoveries like a mikveh, a Jewish ritual cleansing site beneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque, bolster these claims. Additionally, the Sanhedrin, a Jewish religious council, has taken steps to revive Jewish law and temple services in preparation for rebuilding the Third Temple. Preparation for temple reconstruction. The Sanhedrin is gradually implementing measures to prepare for rebuilding the temple. This includes cultivating farms and forests to recreate ancient environmental conditions necessary for temple rituals. Despite concerns about authority and the environment, the Sanhedrin remains committed to promoting and preserving Jewish law and tradition. An essential aspect of temple preparation involves training the Kohanim, members of the priestly class. Although traditional priestly duties require the temple, Kohanim is still revered in Jewish communities. The Sanhedrin is training Kohanim in using equipment for both old and new temples, including altars and burnt offerings. However, preparing for certain rituals, such as the purification ceremony requiring a red calf, presents challenges, as red calves are extinct. The Sanhedrin is exploring methods to create pristine red heifers using the Red Angus breed to address this. 5 such heifers have already been transported to Israel, raised by farmers in a discreet location and awaiting the age of 3 to be used in the purification ceremony. Political challenges and international considerations. The challenges faced by Jews extend beyond religious aspects to politics. The lack of a clear legal ruling and the necessity for a peaceful consensus raise questions about political action. In a democratic country like Israel, the complexities of the political system contribute to ongoing debates over temple construction. Furthermore, neighboring Arab countries perceive the temple's reconstruction as a threat to their sovereignty, adding to political tensions. The financial burden of temple construction may require reliance on outside donors, potentially escalating tensions. The Bible directly addresses the Temple Mount, emphasizing its reconstruction in prophecies from Ezekiel, Daniel, and Zechariah. These prophecies, also present in the New Testament, inspire faith and hope in believers by highlighting the role of the temple in eschatology and the fulfillment of divine promises. The expectation of the temple's rebuilding continues to captivate the imagination of those who eagerly await its realization. However, the complexity of the issue necessitates a solution involving the intervention of mediators capable of addressing the challenges and conflicting interests involved. Many biblical scholars view the temple rebuilding as a specific fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy in the Bible. Daniel's prophecy and the rebuilding of the temple. According to the prophecy in the book of Daniel, Daniel received a vision from an angel foreseeing the arrival of a Messiah, the destruction of a city and its temple, followed by the rebuilding of the temple. This prophecy sets a timeline for the temple's reconstruction, starting with a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. After the temple's rebuilding, the prophecy predicts the arrival of an anointed one who would later be killed, leading to the temple's destruction. For believers, rebuilding the temple is crucial as it fulfills these prophecies, marking a significant step towards the realization of biblical events and the arrival of the final days. Armageddon and the culmination of human history. The prophecy suggests a period of peace and prosperity after the temple's rebuilding, followed by the rise of a new ruler, often interpreted as the Antichrist. This ruler is believed to support the construction of the third temple, signaling the beginning of the end times. The rise of the Antichrist is seen as the precursor to the Battle of Armageddon, a final war between good and evil depicted in the Christian Bible. While there is debate over whether Armageddon refers to a specific location or the battle itself, the general belief is that these events mark the fulfillment of biblical prophecies and the culmination of human history. The rebuilding of the temple is considered a significant step towards these end-time events, leading to the establishment of the kingdom of Jesus Christ. Despite varying interpretations and ongoing debates, believers generally hold that these events signify the fulfillment of biblical prophecies and the eventual establishment of Jesus Christ's kingdom. Besides the third temple, the Book of Enoch has been discovered. Ideas of holy books. Catholics believe in 73 holy books, while Protestants believe in 66. The Vatican, which is like the headquarters of the Catholic Church, doesn't always pay attention to some extra religious works called the biblical Apocrypha. These extra books have stories that challenge what's been taught for a long time. They tell stories that are different from what people usually hear. For example, imagine if Jesus' teaching showed him as angry, selfish, and not liking women. The Gospel of Thomas is one of these unusual books that presents Jesus differently. Another book, the Gospel of Barnabas, suggests that Jesus was just a normal human, not God's son. According to this book, during the Last Supper, Jesus supposedly ran away, leaving Judas Iscariot to face the consequences instead. It's interesting to think about how these views might have affected people's beliefs. But even more surprising is a text from the time of the Old Testament that suggests angels were made of flesh and blood, and some even talk about people traveling into space long before us. This idea even suggests that God might be an alien. The Apocryphal Book of Enoch claims to have some incredible revelations, but the Vatican doesn't accept this book at all. Maybe the Church doesn't like it because it says things that challenge what people already believe. In 1946, young shepherds in Palestine found ancient books hidden in clay pots in a faraway cave. One of these books was the original Book of Enoch. The The Bible only briefly mentions Enoch, saying he was a good man related to Seth, Adam and Eve's son, and lived for 65 years. The book of Genesis tells us a different story. Enoch spent an extra 300 years walking with God. Theologians still argue about what this means. Lately, Bible experts have come up with some interesting ideas, but we'll talk about those later. Contrary to the idea that Enoch was just an ordinary guy, other old stories paint a different picture. They say Enoch was pretty special during his time on earth, adding even more mystery to his story. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church thinks the Book of Enoch is really important, but the Vatican didn't want to include it in the Bible. They didn't like the idea that divine beings could bring sin to earth, which goes against what most Christians believe, that humans are the only ones who can sin. This disagreement kept going, with some people in the church liking other books more than the Book of Enoch. In 1898, a British researcher named Henry Hayman said Enoch didn't write the book like everyone thought. He said it was written by a different group that wasn't religious. This idea made people argue even more about whether the Book of Enoch is real or not. Even now, people still argue about the Book of Enoch. In 2022, the Tomorrow's World website called it fake. This makes you wonder why the Vatican is so against this old book. If it's not that different from the Bible we have now, could even more secrets be hidden inside? So, what do you think of the incident that took place in Israel challenging religious beliefs? Comment below and subscribe for more.